Hey, what's up? This is Harry Wagner from Harry Situations, and today I want to talk to you all about trailers. Now, at first this might seem like a boring topic, but even if you don't own a trailer, please stick with me because we're going to cover things that'll keep you safe if you buy a trailer in the future, if you borrow a trailer, or you tow with your buddies. Every year, before King of the Hammers, before Easter Jeep Safari, these other big events, I see people posting up on social media and they're on the side of the road with trailer problems. These can all be avoided if you just do the proper maintenance and have the right upgrades. They've allowed me to put over 100,000 miles on this Big Tex trailer in the last 15 years, going as far north as Alaska and as far south as Baja. Now, I have been stranded one time, but I'll get to that a little bit later when we talk to my friend Merl about how he helped me out. One of the things I find is I'm often towing more than just my vehicle. So I'm headed to a destination for a week or longer, and I'm bringing firewood or I'm bringing camping gear with me. And as a result, I added this expanded metal box in the front here. It's got my wheel chock. It's got this taller jack that Brennan Metcalf makes, and it can hold like firewood or a little action packer in here with your gear. Now, it used to have rails that went up, and unfortunately, when I jackknifed the trailer, that rail was such that it smashed into the back of my truck. So now everything's nice and low, so even if you turn super tight, you don't have to worry about these things contacting the trailer. That's a reason too I went with this box instead of a tongue box. This is actually made for the side rail of a pickup, but it fits perfectly on the front of the trailer, and it's a great place to hold things like your straps. I'll keep a tarp in here if I need to climb under and do any maintenance or anything like that. I also have the battery in here for my winch. So I do have a winch on the front of this trailer. Now, you don't need a Warren winch for your trailer with synthetic winch line. I will admit that is excessive, but this is what I had from another project, and so I threw it on a Warren winch cradle on the front of the trailer, and it's super handy for things like dragging projects home that don't run. After 15 years, this trailer recently got an extreme makeover. So that involved removing the deck, taking just the trailer frame to an industrial supply shop here where they painted the whole thing with epoxy. And then my friend Merl, who you've heard about already and you'll see again, put the new deck on and I stained it. Now I realize it looks like it came from Ashley Home Furniture now, but I like it. I'll confess, I spent as much refurbishing this trailer as I spent initially on it when I bought it in Texas 15 years ago, but trailer prices have gone through the roof the last few years, so I still figure I was money ahead compared to buying a new trailer. Two of the first upgrades I made when I bought this trailer were adding these tie-down points front and rear so I can put a vehicle on here and use my straps, and also these jacks in the rear corners. The jacks in particular have been super handy. So if you have a heavy vehicle to load like my Ford, sometimes when the front of the vehicle gets here, it lifts up the front of the trailer and even the back of the truck, and it can take the whole thing for a ride. These prevent that. They also allow you to load a vehicle on the trailer even if you don't have a tow vehicle hooked up to the front. Or if you put the front foot down also, you can lift the whole trailer up off the ground and service the axles or change a tire if you need to. Super handy. I got these from Harbor Freight. They're not very expensive and I highly recommend them. This trailer worked great when I had my Toyota pickup or the Jeep. They fit between the fenders relatively easily because of the narrow track width. But when I got my Ford truck, the first time I loaded it on the trailer, it smashed the stock fenders. They bowed out and they rubbed on the inside of the tires. And as a result, not only did I have to change the fenders, I had to buy new tires also. It's a pretty expensive mistake. Now the fenders have 1/4-inch plate on the inside, and my buddies at Samco Fabrication added this 1-inch box tubing on the outside. So when I load the Ford up, I have to drive over one of the fenders, but now they don't mind at all. I've seen some other people, they have their fenders pinned and they can take the whole thing off. That seems like a really good solution too. One of the more recent upgrades I've made is tire pressure monitors for the trailer. My friend Terry Mode runs these on his RV and he recommended the tire minder system. One of the issues I've had is if you get a flat on your trailer, a lot of times it's really hard to tell. You might not feel it in your tow vehicle, you might not even see it out of your mirrors. So I feel like TPMS is more important even on a trailer than it is on the tow rig. And how this works is these go on, screw onto each of your valve stems. Terry recommended I upgrade to metal valve stems since it's sort of heavy. You don't want that rubber valve stem to fatigue. And they operate via Bluetooth. The 4 communicate with this that has a mini USB. You can just leave this in your tow rig. And then it has an app that tells you all sorts of useful information, including the temperature of each tire and the pressure of each tire. And you can set up alerts, so if that tire starts going down, it'll alert you. If it gets too hot, which is a sign you might have a blowout soon, it'll alert you. I've really been amazed, even when I don't have issues, at how much the temperature changes in a tire as it goes from sitting to going down the interstate. 25 degrees is not uncommon to see, and I think it's really useful information to have. I highly recommend this upgrade. One of the best bang for the buck upgrades you can get is tire covers. Trailers, 99% of their lives, they're just sitting on the side of your house, in your backyard. They're not going down the road. And the sun can do a lot of damage to your tires. You'll even notice these covers are starting to get pretty worn out, but I'd rather replace them than replace the tires. I cover the spare also, but to be honest, this cover comes off when I'm going down the road, so I pull it. I've had to replace it a few times. It's not quite tight enough to stay on going at interstate speeds. My friend Vern Simons once borrowed a trailer to go from Phoenix to Moab for Easter Jeep Safari. And he got a little ways out of Phoenix, blew a tire. Took the spare off, replaced it, went down the road, that tire blew. Had to find another tire, went down the road, that tire blew. The 2 on the other side were fine because those were the 2 that were up against the house. They never got sun in Phoenix, but the 3 on this side all were in the sun all day long and just dry rotted out. Sometimes it's cheaper to have your own trailer and take care of it than it is to borrow someone's poorly maintained trailer, is the lesson to be learned here. So we are here today with my friend Merl. I've known Merl for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years now, I feel like. I've had one trailer issue. I try and avoid them, but I did have an issue and I should have seen it coming because my trailer started to get noisy and I thought it was the ramps rattling around in the back. But what it actually was the shackles were getting all elongated and eventually one of them broke. And so I had to limp home, and my friend Nate and Scott over at Nate's Precision, they said, you gotta talk to Merl, he's the guy. How long have you been working on trailers, Merl?
Most of my life.
Yeah?
But I've been doing it full-time after I retired in '05.
Okay.
And I worked on trailers since to stay busy.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't stay busy when you get older, your body starts to deteriorate and you don't do anything then.
So in all those years, what's the most common thing, like maintenance-wise, you see people either overlook or mess up on their trailers?
By far, it's the axle bearings, not
Yeah.
packing their wheel bearings, by far. That's the biggest single problem.
And so is a bearing buddy enough? They have that little grease zerk on them?
Harry, the bearing buddies are really not what everybody thinks they are.
Okay.
If you put a bearing buddy on, it's on the outside bearing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only bearing it greases.
Oh.
And they put them on boat trailers because they can pump it full of grease and keep water from building up in there.
Okay.
But you're only greasing the outer bearing. The inner bearing, which is your main bearing, the bigger bearing.
Right.
And if you ever look at a drum and how they're built,
Mm-hmm.
the actual tire itself is riding right above, centered on the inner bearing, which is the largest.
Okay.
The outer one's just kind of a stabilizer there, and it's just idling along with you.
Okay.
And so which one needs the grease? Of course, it's the inner one. Which one do we give it to? Of course, the outer one. But when you don't do the proper maintenance, right there, you can see the consequence.
Ouch. So once this spindle gets scored like this, it's not a bolt-on spindle. You have to replace the whole
You have to
axle at that
replace
point?
the entire axle.
That gets expensive.
And it gets very expensive. This axle by itself is darn near $400. But the main problem is the grease, a good quality grease.
So they're not all created equal.
They're not.
Okay.
They're not. There's some that are much lighter. Some aren't as heat resistant. I use a grease that's called Bigfoot. It's orange and it's stringy, just like bubble gum.
Huh.
And it really lasts. And it is hard to get off when you get it on your clothes. And it's wonderful in the bearings. You can see why.
Yeah.
The biggest thing you find is most people, no matter what their trailer is capable of, they're going to have it do more than what it's capable of.
Guilty as charged. I think you've seen my trailer, so it has 6-lug axles, and I'm not sure. You can get a 6-lug axle in a...
You can actually get a 6-lug in a 3,500, a 4,000, or a 5,200 pound axle. And the trailer's weight is based upon what your axles are capable of and your tires.
Okay.
I can have a 5,000 pound axle, but if I have tires that aren't up to that, then that drops the rating of the trailer.
Sure.
And people aren't aware of that. Harry, the rule I use here is that when you come, and I think I did it to you, when you come and pick up your trailer, I'll guide you into it, but you hook it up.
Right.
I don't hook up somebody else's trailer because if I see them doing something I don't agree with, I can point it out to them.
Yeah.
And maybe save a problem down the road.
So what can you do? Are there different upgrades you can do for your suspension or parts that are better than the others if you're replacing them?
Harry, not really. Not really, because if you start changing one thing, you got to change everything.
Sure.
So go to a greasable bolt for your shackle bolts or your equalizer bolts. You think, this is going to solve it. It sure helps. But you need brass bushings then instead of the nylon bushings they come with.
Okay.
Because the nylon is actually impregnated with silicone and things that give it the slip ability, and they hold up pretty good. They don't crush out normally. They wear out from bouncing and wear.
Okay.
The brass ones are great, but you have to remember to grease them.
Sure.
And people don't do that.
And now what about wiring on new trailers?
Wiring on trailers is probably the second biggest problem that I run into on people's trailers. Most all the trailers that we buy come from the factory with a thing like that that's called a Scotch lock. They come for different gauges of wire. And all you do is you run your wire through it, put the other one in, you crimp it down on this little metal tab, and see those little holes down through the middle of it? Well, those tiny little holes then strip the insulation and even cuts many of the wires so that it makes contact. Well, the problem with these is you can see it's loose around the wire, and in Nevada and places where you have sand and salt on the roads, it gets in there and you get corrosion. And the next thing you know, the corrosion starts crawling up the wires and you'll have a wire break. Then you come to me and I get out my dikes and I go just like that and like that. And I cut them off, I throw that in the garbage, strip my wires, put on a proper connector that has shrink tubing on it.
Okay.
So you put this on, and so then you shrink this down, and it crimps down on the wire tight.
So now it's weatherproof. You don't
Now
have to
it's
worry about getting
weatherproof.
that water in there.
And that really, Harry, is the biggest single problem is ground. And most trailers, when we get them from the factory, they do not have the trailer itself grounded. They depend on the ground from the vehicle for the trailer. I always put on what's called a J-box where all of our wires hook in, and then I ground it right there by the J-box. So everything on that trailer is independent. I can plug in a trailer not even hooked up to the vehicle, and all the vehicle lights will work on the trailer, even though it's not sitting on the ball. If it's the ground from the trailer, a lot of times you have to be sitting on the ball.
Well, Merl, as usual, I learned something new from you. I think every time I come here, I learn something new. I really appreciate your time, and thanks for sharing all of your expertise and knowledge with us here today.
Harry, I enjoy you all the time because you are always willing to learn, and you listen.
That's it for this episode. Hopefully you learned something new about trailers and maintenance. I know I did. Merl is a wealth of information. If you're in Reno, I definitely recommend you seek him out. And if you don't live in Reno, you have to find the Merl in your neighborhood.
Thanks for watching Driving Line. If you guys like this video, consider subscribing to our channel so you'll never miss any of the content we create here. Whether you're into trucks, Jeeps, imports, domestic vehicles, or anything in between, we are here to fuel your passion. So hit that subscribe button and we'll see you guys next time.